experiencing. The direct experiencing. Let's see if we can learn something about experiencing. Well, first of all, experiencing is immediate. Experiencing happens. Experiencing is direct. Whatever idea you are having about any experience, that idea is never the experience itself. You would never ever be able to describe experiencing itself. You would never ever be able to describe that so that the description would be accurate. No description will ever be able to contain the experiencing itself. But what is experiencing? What is experiencing? If we want to know the answer to that question, that can only be a direct knowing, or as I usually say, a different kind of knowing. Most human beings, they are primarily interested in the description of the experiencing. They want to share their experiencing. But that is impossible. How would that be possible to share an experience? Say, for instance, I have been doing a lot of scuba diving in my life. And there was a time when was that? 15 years ago or something like that, where I was down in the Mediterranean. And my brother and I, we were diving at a small island. What was very special about this dive site was that when we got down to around 10 meters of depth, there was a huge entrance to a cave. Or rather, it was actually a tunnel because it went from one side of the island to the other side of the island. And then my brother and I, we dived into this tunnel. And down in the middle of the tunnel, exactly underneath the island, this tunnel was the size of a, how to describe it? A bus could drive through it. So it was a fairly large tunnel. But then in the middle of this tunnel, and at that point we were down around 20 meters of depth, it was not a straight tunnel. The tunnel was curved. So the brother and I, we looked at each other, and then we turned off our lights. And the experience of being inside a tunnel underneath an island at 20 meters of depth in pitch black. How would I be able to give you that experience? There is nothing I can say. I can describe it in words, try to describe it as precisely as possible, but that direct experience of being in the middle of that tunnel in pitch black the only sensory input was the sound from the regulator. But then sometimes just simply holding the breath. Magic. For that matter, it felt as if you were in another universe, which it kind of is. But an experience like that cannot be shared. It has to be experienced. And although I know that it is a good story, and for some it will sound dramatic, which it wasn't. It was extremely peaceful. But see, the funny thing is that the inability to share an experience is the same no matter what. It does not have to be as exotic as the experience that I just described. Any experience is a direct expression of life. No matter how tiny the experience is. Every experience is an expression of life. And you are there on the first row. Not even that, you are on the stage. Experiencing. But what is that? Can we say who is it that is experiencing? Well, of course, it's possible to say anything. But is it a who that is experiencing. If we want to know what it is that is experiencing, we need to peel layers. Is it the human body that is experiencing? Well, it is a part of it. The sensory system, the nervous system of the body, it is a part of it. The sensory system of the body is providing a pathway to this manifested world. But what is experiencing the body? It is possible to experiencing the body. The matter of fact, you are constantly experiencing the body. Well, is it then the body that is experiencing the body? Some would say yes, it is. But that's only if you haven't investigated it thoroughly. Well, as any experiencing that cannot be shared directly, experiencing has to be experienced. As any experiencing that is a direct expression of life in the moment, I cannot share with you the revelation about what it is that is experiencing. I can talk about it. I can point at it. But that which is experiencing has to rediscover itself. Not that, not that. Is it the body? Not that. Is it the human being? Not that. And then if we continue that journey, we will end up in a unlimited space of potential. A silent space, a quiet space. And it is, when observed directly, it is within that space that experiencing takes place. That experiencing is arising. That space we call consciousness or awareness, but it doesn't really matter what we call it, because that space, and I call it also the space, the void, you can call it anything, but no description will ever be able to fully reveal that space. But as you have heard me say before, fall in love with stillness. Fall in love with silence. Because when you do that, you do fall in love with yourself. And the essential part of you is that silent space in which everything appears. And it is very obvious when you investigate, when you look upon it yourself. For instance, consciousness, is that within the body? Well, since experiencing the body takes place within consciousness, the body is within consciousness. It is so obvious when it is seen clearly. The ground of being, awareness, consciousness. We could also call it love. But again, it doesn't matter what we call it. But you are that in your essence. And it is that silent space that awakens to itself. Although that is not completely correct to call it that, because that silent space is always awake. But it awakens to itself no, words cannot describe it. And I will fail. But it doesn't matter. Words will always fail us in the end. Words are meant for descriptions. Words cannot transmit the direct realization, the direct recognition, the direct knowing. Try now to turn your attention towards your body. Start by putting your attention inside the inside of your hands, both of them, and just be aware. You can feel the aliveness. A subtle tinkling. That realization, this aliveness, that aliveness, that experience arises within consciousness. That experience arises within this boundless space of silence. Within that space, anything can happen. That space is an unlimited space of potential. That is the ground of being. And that is what you are in your essence, my friend. It is, of course, okay to be interested in any kind of spirituality, in any kind of non-duality for that matter. But if you do not balance it with simply just sitting and resting as this awareness, as this silent space, then you are just filling your mind with more information. And that alone will never ever awaken you. Because what you are awakening to is that silent space. And at the very threshold where the final step is taken, metaphorically speaking, that threshold, we have to leave all our knowledge behind. That awakening is out of any kind of knowledge. Knowledge can, in some situation, be a pathway, but the final step, at the final doorway, we leave the knowledge behind. And there it is, what we have been looking for. Ourself, the core of being. And the funny thing is that in a sense, the core of being is non-being. Unlimited potential. Coming into form, going out of form again. Physical form, thought forms, emotional forms. A gigantic soup of manifestations, arising, disappearing again. And everything is happening within consciousness. The entire universe arises inside consciousness. That is difficult for the mind to understand. And in some sense, that cannot be understood by the mind. If a statement like that, the entire universe arises inside consciousness, if a statement like that is presented to the mind tries to understand it by thinking about it, by conceptualizing, by judging, by comparing to what it already knows. But the entire universe cannot arise inside the mind. The mind is an aspect of the entire universe. And therefore the mind and the universe is inside consciousness. And that is why, to awaken to that realization, we have to leave behind the mind. You are not the mind. The mind is an interpreting mechanism. It's a tool. There is nothing wrong about the mind and using the mind, but it is just a tool. A marvelous tool, as long as we are not lost inside it, identifying with it. So all of this, are there any dangers to that? That I will be talking about in the next video. Potential dangers of non-duality, and as I had said before, no, there are no dangers to it. But the mind can make an idea out of it. And it can turn into fanaticism, for instance. But I will talk more about that in the next video. Please remember to subscribe if you have not yet done that. And this time I will leave you with a small visual meditation. Just sit and watch my latest painting, which I am now finished with. It's right here behind me. Until we see again, my friend. Take care.